Well, it's my pleasure to be here today. I love talking to groups like this, especially people who spend a lot of time outside like you guys do. I love doing scout groups and camping groups and master naturalists and groups like this because you're liable to encounter some of these things, and not just that, but you have a real curiosity. You want to know. You want to know what these plants are, what those animals are, and that's great. So we're going to talk about that, and I picked a little bit of a whimsical title, Our Friend the Snake. I don't imagine everybody in here agrees with that, but I'll try to win a few more of you over by the end of the program. And they really are our friends. We benefit from their presence because, well, they eat a lot of rats and mice for one thing, and that's good. But yeah, Mary Lou's a big fan. But more importantly, they're just an integral part of nature, and nature's got it all worked out. It works really well together, and we just try to get in there and enjoy it and work within the confines of what nature set up. Let me find my clicker here, and I think, hey, it's already good. So what we're going to do today, and before I get any further, I love questions, okay? We're going to have some things that we talk about. I'm going to try to impart some knowledge, and we'll have some give and take. But anytime you have a question, raise your hand. I love questions. That's probably where you learn the most. So we're going to study the facts and myths about snakes, and they're probably more myths than facts. Common species around here, things that you're liable to encounter, and how to recognize it and deal with it. And you might think you recognize a snake, it's green, it has a pattern, it's this long, but you can also tell a lot from its behavior. That's actually helpful in identification, so we'll talk about that. And before I get any further, I'll just show you some tools of the trade. I've got some stuff when we talk about snake bite, but this is a snake hook that my wife gave me. It's collapsible, so you can take it on trips. And this is a snake bag. My mother used to call these pillowcases before I educated her that that's really not what their main use was. All right, so where are snakes found? Well, around the world, we're kind of in the middle. We've got a pretty good representation of snakes, but you look at China, Brazil, India, and Indonesia. That's the hot spots. And what this says, this refers to the number of species. It doesn't refer to the number of snakes. So you can have a range for a snake, but it might not be very common in that range. Or you can have a range where there's tons of them, like Texas rat snakes or diamondback rattlers. They're common within their range. And so this doesn't tell the whole story, but it gives you a general idea. And of course, there's some places that don't have snakes, like Greenland, Iceland, Hawaii, although and Ireland. They did intercept a snake in a shipment of Christmas trees on Hawaii the other day, so they're really working hard to keep those out. Largest and smallest snakes in the world. Who knows the largest snake in the world? Anaconda, that's right. By record, it's not the longest, but it is the largest. And it's not a little bit larger, it's a lot larger. Anybody want to guess why an anaconda, if you had a 20-foot anaconda and a 20-foot reticulated python, the anaconda might weigh twice as much. Any idea why that would be? More food. Ooh, I did get to pet some capybaras the other day down in Cleburne. That was fun. That's their food. They spend a lot of time in the water. That's right. So they can get really big because that buoys them up quite a bit. That's the main reason. And so I was on a trip down to the Amazon some years ago with this guy named Morgan, who used to do jungle survival training for the astronauts in the Gemini and Apollo programs, I believe, down in the jungles of Panama. So he was an interesting cat to hang out. Anyway, he knew his way around. And we're walking, we're walking down a trail in the middle of the jungle. We're 50 miles downriver from Iquitos. We're in the middle of nowhere. And we're walking down a trail going to this shaman's house. Some of the people in our group wanted to get worked on. And we met a boy just on the trail, and he had a box, and he had this anaconda in it. And we thought, well, that's interesting. He was real proud of it. He showed it to us, and we noticed that. Okay, sorry. The box is in the first picture. If you see here, this is the box it was in, and it was the screen was on the top. It was nailed shut. And we thought, okay, that snake's probably going to stay in there until it dies, and we didn't want that. So we began negotiating with the boy to get the snake. Now, he wanted to keep the box, and he actually wanted to keep the snake. So negotiations went on for quite a while. We finally got him up to $3, and he let it go. So we got that snake for $3. We took it to a really neat place, turned it loose, and while we were at the shaman's house, what had happened just before this was, I was wanting to take pictures of my wife who was being worked on by the shaman, and this other member of our group, who was a musician from New York who played the bass, said, I'll hold the snake for you. Because at that point, he'd seen me holding it. It wasn't any big deal. Well, he held it like, I guess you'd hold a bass or something, and the snake thought, oh, something's got me, and just nailed him. He didn't want to hold the snake anymore. He gave it back to me, so I just let it go wherever it wanted to, so it didn't feel threatened. So it's just crawling around on me there while I'm watching the shaman work. They get lots bigger than this, and I wouldn't do that with one like this. That's a big one. That's these days, that's probably, I would guess, 16 feet long or maybe more. That's a huge one these days.
Where is it?
Probably in Venezuela. That's where most of them are. And I know researchers down there, the way they go out and find them is after the rainy season and the rains recede, there will be just these little patches of water with grasses and stuff. And they'll go walking around in this grass, stomping around till they step on one, and then they just start pulling it out. I've never done that. Small. What's that?
Do they eat those snakes?
No, I don't think so. No. I've never heard of that. Okay, and this one hasn't been known to science for maybe 20 years or something, but it's a Barbados thread snake. That's a big one there. That's probably full grown. This is similar to a blind snake that you can find in your flower bed. If you've ever found a snake that's kind of pinkish, maybe about this long, round on both ends, you think, oh, that's a worm, right? But if you look closely, you'll see scales. You can run into those in your flower bed. So I already talked to somebody who has. Oh, no. No, even if it were, that's so tiny. Actually, we're going to talk about poisonous and venomous quite a bit because the word is venomous, and we'll get to that. But this guy has such a small mouth, you couldn't find a place that could bite you. But these are okay. They eat ant and termite larvae, things like that, so they're fine to have. Okay, Snakes 101. You get to take a little quiz here. Just you don't have to write anything down. Just do it in your head. For most snakes, the most important sense is what? Anybody want to guess? Smell, sure. How do they smell? With their tongues. That's right. Okay, good. All right, this is 101. We've got a couple more that get harder. Most snake species are venomous. True or false? False. Good. There's a lot of my stories will come out of Arkansas because I had a great grandmother in Arkansas, and she would probably tell you that they're all venomous. She told me a lot of interesting things when I was young. False. Right. Good. Some snakes can sting with their tongue. That was one of my great grandmother's stories. Yeah. No, they can't. Yeah. Everything she told me was wrong. Who has the greatest number of deadly snake species? Australia's pretty famous for that. And also, they have more, I believe they have more venomous species than non-venomous species, which is really weird. But that's, it's not just snakes. There's a lot of stuff in Australia that'll kill you. Snake myths. These are fun. See how many of these you've heard. All snakes have fangs. True or false? Well, it says myths, so yeah, okay, false. Venomous snakes have fangs because that's how they deliver the venom. Rattlesnakes always rattle before they strike. They don't have to. If it's cold out or if they don't feel quite as threatened, for whatever reason, they may choose to rattle, they may not. They don't really talk about it much. They don't tell us. We have to speculate. A snake can bite you only from a coiled position. No, that's not true. Snakes can't hear airborne sounds. Now that's one that really has been thought to be true for a long time, but now recent research has shown that they do react to some airborne sounds, particularly low frequency sounds. It's Not a big deal to them. They can also pick up vibrations from you just walking. Hoop snakes can roll down hills. Okay, now, not only can they grab their tail, make a loop, and roll down a hill to get away from something, according to my great-grandmother, they can do that to flip into a car and attack you. I swear she told me these things. I still grew up liking snakes. I don't care. Milk snakes can actually suck milk from cows. The night watchman at our nature center told me he observed that. I don't know what to say to that. Now, this is one that you hear a lot. You'll see this in articles. You'll hear doctors saying this. You'll hear some people who ought to know better say this. Young snakes can't control how much they inject. They think because they're young, they just haven't figured it out yet. But as we know, young snakes are born ready to go. After their first shed, they're going to go bite something, kill it, and eat it. And they don't have any reason to waste venom any more than a full-grown snake. There's no scientific studies or evidence to show that this is likely to be true. So, I'm putting it in the myth category. Okay. Snake basics. What do you do if you're a snake? Well, most are non-venomous. That's good. They smell with their tongues. We knew that. They can strike up to about half their body length. Now, that's for most snakes. There are some that can strike 100% of their body length. There's some little jumping pit vipers in Central America and stuff. They're not very big, but they can actually end up, over here. They can throw their whole body. They can leave the ground and they strike with such force. Am I done? Is that it? It's like the Gong Show. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Okay. But for most snakes, they can strike up to about half their body length. So if you're looking at a 4-foot snake or, heaven forbid, a 6-foot snake and you're 3 foot away from it, you're pretty safe. Go ahead and step back a little bit more just to be on the safe side. But and they're not going to attack you. Some are fast, but you can outrun them all because you're very motivated. Rattlesnakes can rattle before they strike. Snakes can be afraid but not mad. This is another one. There are words that I don't like we'll get to in a minute, but just because something's all puffed up and hissing and maybe lunging at you, he's not mad. What is he?
Scared.
He's afraid. He's defensive. He's worried you might be some big predator that's going to kill him and eat him. He's doing what he should do. Okay, but they don't get mad. Their brains are so simple. They're like the primitive part of our brain. There's no emotion in snakes. I've had snake friends who say, "Oh, my snake loves me." I go, "No, he doesn't." They can't. Okay, tolerate you. And this is another one that you hear a lot. Snakes do not unhinge their jaws to swallow. Their jaw doesn't come completely loose. We'll see a slide here in a minute that shows they've actually got an extra bone and some real cool arrangements that allow them to open their mouth really huge, but it doesn't come unhinged. A lot of people do when I show snakes, but that's different. Let's see, where are we here? I swear I pushed that button. There we go. Okay, what do? They rest, they sleep. They're pretty simple animals. They find food, they eat, they move to heat up. This is starting to sound like my brother-in-law. Pretty simple. And they defend themselves. Okay. So basically, if a snake doesn't have something to do, he doesn't do anything. If he's had a meal, he's found a place that the temperature's comfortable, he'll curl up in a log or under a rock and maybe not move a muscle for, 2 or 3 weeks. He can just stay there. Amazing. They crank their metabolism way down. I had a snake over the winter, and this was in a warm room where I had all my animals. It was a copperhead, and a lot of the snakes would eat through the winter because I had their habitats controlled. He went 5 months without eating, just not interested. Because she had babies in the spring, and she didn't even lose weight. She maintained her weight. It was just pretty amazing. Words matter. Okay, this is a pet peeve of mine. Okay, soapbox. Aggressive. You see words like aggressive, or I was attacked by a snake, an ambush. You see these in articles about snakes all the time. You see these kind of words on aggressive is one that they use in nature centers or places where they've got a snake on exhibit. You'll see that word. They're not aggressive. They're not looking for trouble. They're defensive is what they are, right? Garden snake. Any of you ever see a garden snake? Have I ever given a program to a group of kids and they go, I saw a garden snake in our yard? Okay, no, there's no such thing as a garden snake. That probably started from garter snake, or they saw it in their garden, kind of like the grass snake, you know. That's just a good generic term for a snake you see out in the grass. So there's no garden snake, but if you go to Europe, there is actually a common name, grass snake there. That's the official common name. But in the United States, we don't have a grass snake. I never correct the kids when they say that, though. It's okay. Poisonous as opposed to venomous. This one is a very common mistake. You see this in a lot of articles about snakes. They'll use the words interchangeably. They'll say poisonous when they mean venomous. What's the difference? When something is poisonous, what does that mean? How do you get poisoned? Ingesting it? Touching, that's one way. If it can be absorbed through the skin, or toxins can be absorbed through the skin. Breathing, drinking, eating, intake. What about venomous? How do you get envenomated? Bite, sting. Okay, so you can have a stinger, fangs. It could be a centipede. It could be a snake. It could be a stonefish, a venomous spine that you step on. But that's an injection mechanism. Okay, so there's venom glands, ductwork going to something, a stinger, a fang, that they use to inject into you. That's venom. So when we talk about venomous snakes, that's what we're talking about. Now, is there such a thing as a poisonous snake? Boy, that's a good one. Up in Oregon, there are snakes that eat toads that are toxic, and they store the toxin in their body. So if you ate that snake, you would actually be poisoned. So there are, to confuse matters more, there are poisonous snakes, but that's very rare. So we're going to be talking about venomous snakes here later today. All right, another quiz, a little harder. The most venomous U.S. snake is the eastern coral, western diamondback, Mojave rattler. Anybody? Everybody thinks it's the coral because it's really close. Turns out that the Mojave rattler, drop for drop, is slightly worse than this. Yeah. Yeah, and the Mojave rattler is interesting. So you go to West Texas and go west from there to Arizona, Sonoran Desert. That's where you find the Mojave rattler. They look a lot like western diamondbacks, but their venom can be different. So most rattlesnakes have primarily a hemotoxic venom that attacks your circulatory system and your muscles and all that stuff. It does a lot of local damage. A neurotoxin tends to attack your nervous system. You don't get a lot of local damage. You go, I feel fine, and then all of a sudden your eyelids start drooping, you talk funny, and then you can't breathe because it shuts down your nerve pathway. If you go to Arizona and divide the state in half on a diagonal, on one side of the line, the Mojave rattler is one way, the other side has the other venom. So there's actually been cases where somebody came in and said, oh, I think I got bitten by a diamondback, and they go, well, I don't see anything, and they watch them for a little while, send them home, and then they start having problems or die because it was actually a Mojave rattler, and it was a neurotoxin bite. You don't see a lot of effects. Anyway, okay, so coral, Mojave, don't pick up any of these guys. Okay, it's the Mojave. Snakes are either constrictors or venomous. This is one I like, because if you named a snake, if we just went around the room and named all the snakes we could think of, they would probably be in one category or the other. Are there snakes that aren't either, though? How many of you know about a hognose snake? Yeah. They just grab something and start eating it. There are other snakes that do that, too. Most are either in the constrictor or venomous families, but there are some that aren't either. Good. All snakes have teeth. This is another good one. See, I told you these got harder. Do all snakes have teeth? No, but there's not very many. There's between 3,000 and 4,000 species of snakes, and I can only think of 2 that don't have teeth. You go to Africa and India, there's an African egg eater and an Indian egg eater, and they have just decided they don't need teeth at all, and they've evolved those away, and because they're obligate egg eaters, so that all they eat is eggs. They don't have to catch it and hold it or do anything like that. It's just there, and they just have to find it and swallow it. So their teeth are gone. most U.S. snake bites are due to the, copperhead. Yeah, that's true. In Texas, of course, it might be the diamondback. A lot of people get bitten by the diamondback because they jack with them. You know, they have them as pets. They see them out in the wild. They want to catch them and take a picture with them, stuff like that. But sheer number of bites, the records show that's the copperhead. Okay. These are the ones we're going to talk about today, and it's not all the ones you're liable to run into, but it's some of the more common ones. Rough earth snake, Texas brown snake, those are two of your flower bed snakes. I bet a lot of you in this room have run across those guys. Little sweethearts. I mean, you couldn't make either one of them bite you. Rough green snake, another one if you work with plants. It likes to be in plants because it's camouflaged. Eastern hognose Texas rat snake, king snakes, eastern yellow-bellied racer, and water snakes. Now, these are just the non-venomous snakes we'll talk about. So here I am holding a very, very large rough earth snake. This is a full-grown rough earth snake, and you can see the malice in his eyes, right? These are just the most docile little things. So they're pretty fossorial. They like to just be in the litter and in the mulch. And so if you're digging in your flower bed or garden, you can run into these guys. It's not uncommon. No pattern, plain brown. A big female would be about 12 inches. Mostly they're going to be smaller. Harmless. Like I say, if you tried to make this bite you, there's nothing you could do, I don't think, to make this snake bite. And of course, it's non-venomous, so we wouldn't care anyway. Another little sweetheart is the Texas brown snake. Now, a female in that would be about 18 inches long, big as they get. Also on the flower bed. Now, you can see the difference here. Here's how you identify these guys. It's got a little bit of a pattern. The two things I look for are this black splotch under the eye. The size, of course, is a giveaway. It's just a brown snake. And then it's got this stripe going down its back, kind of a pale stripe going down its back. And then just flecks of black and white, but this pale stripe is kind of a giveaway. So that's what to look for there. Now, another thing, in general, you see the snakes we're looking at now have the round pupils. That's generally a good sign. That's usually your non-venomous indicator. Okay. Any questions so far? How many of you have seen either one of those first two? Yeah. It's great. Well, again, these eat ant and termite larvae, worms, slugs, things like that. So you don't mind having them around.
How about roaches?
Oh, I don't know what to do about those guys. You need geckos. You just turn a bunch of geckos loose, maybe. Okay, so this is a rough green snake. Very slender. I mean, like a pencil. It might be 3 feet long, but about the width of a pencil. And it's got no pattern on it. It's green, yellow belly, round pupils. And it likes to get up in shrubs and bushes and stuff, and it'll just hang there. And you walk by, you won't see it, but it's sticking out like a branch. And sometimes when you come by, it feels like it needs to put on a little bit more of a show. It'll do this. Like the breeze is blowing, but it's not really blowing, but they'll do that. They're great. Largely insectivorous. They eat a lot of crickets and things. You could have one as a pet, I guess, but not too long. I mean, they get about this long, but they're pretty arboreal. You see them on the ground too, but it's not unusual to see them in trees. There. And the clown of the snake world, the eastern hognose. These are the funniest snakes. All right, so what you notice first is maybe that it's got a little pushed up snout. It's like a shovel. It likes to dig because it likes to eat toads and frogs, and a lot of these toads might be kind of buried down. So it'll smell them and find them and dig them up and eat them. The other thing that's interesting, this is true for a lot of snakes. You see how this stripe kind of goes through the eye? There's some where the pigment in the eye even extends to the stripe, and it's really hard to see the eye. Why would you want to hide your eye if you're out there in nature? Yeah, it's really good camouflage. If I'm looking around, if I'm worried, I'm looking around, I see a couple of eyeballs. That's going to get my attention. So if you can hide that, then everything else can kind of blend in. You see how he's pretty well camouflaged. Okay, so these aren't very big, but they tell quite a story. They're fascinating. They're the ones who play dead. So if you come upon a hognose, and I've done this, and you worry him, he'll flare his neck out, he'll hiss, and you think he's striking, but he's not really. He's jerking. He jerks backward. You put your hand down there, he just jerks backwards. He's just putting on a show. Now in Arkansas, here we go, they call these spreading adders and puff adders and think they're all venomous, and they kill them, and they think that even if they breathe on you, you'll be poisoned. Arkansas is an amazing place. But what this did was, and I saw one do even more than this, and I know you just ate, but sometimes they will defecate and regurgitate like a frog or something and then writhe around in it and then flip over on their back and their tongue's sticking out. And you'd swear they just died. I mean, if you saw it happen, you wouldn't think they're faking. Now, at that point, you can go away for 5 minutes and come back and go, where'd he go? Or, this is even more fun if you don't mind doing it, turn him back over on his stomach. What do you think he does? He flips back over on his back because he really wants you to think he's dead. They're just amazing. And like possums, they don't have any control over this. It's just something that happens. The neat thing about the eastern, see, okay, right here in the Metroplex, if you take Dallas-Fort Worth and divide it down the middle, that's the east, this is the west. And you see certain species this way, like the eastern hognose. You go this way, you see the western hognose. Well, it's not nearly as entertaining as the eastern hognose. And they're also very brown and plain, and they don't have all this variety. The eastern hognose can be colored like this, brightly colored, and you see he's flared out here, so he's a little excited. His head is just that. That's his head. Or he can look like this. That's the same species. And so is that. He's a little excited. And even solid black. So a lot of variability in color and pattern, but they all act the same. All right. The neat thing about them is they eat toads. Now, why don't a lot of things eat toads? Well, they're poisonous, right? They have all these glands on their back, especially the big parotoid glands, and they secrete this white milky. You ever have a dog pick up a toad? They spit it out pretty quickly, don't they? And then do they like salivate and carry on? Yeah. There are some toads that are so bad they can actually kill a dog if he doesn't spit it out real fast. It can be very toxic. Now, but I see two problems. One, you're eating something that's toxic, and two, this toad is taking in a lot of air that says, you can't swallow me. What do you think happens? Well, we got to let the air out of the toad, then we have to deal with the poison, right? I'm sorry, I keep hitting that. Okay. Well, you'll see in the back of his mouth there are some rather large fangs. These are about halfway back in his mouth. You also see the big shovel here. But these deflate the toad, and like I say, they're actually fangs. So there are venom glands in this guy along his jaw, not like in a viper. It's a different kind of deal. But he will bite and hold on to that toad. It will let the air out of the toad, and then this venom, mild venom, will come down and go into the wound, and it kind of anesthetizes the toad. So when he's swallowed, he's not dead. He's just, well, he's kind of okay with it all, I guess, you know? It's kind of like getting a root canal or something. Yeah, whatever. Just do what you got to do. But that's how he solves that problem. And if we want to look at it a little closer, this is the genus of the hognose is heterodon, which means different kinds of teeth. And so we see the large fangs here. There's two on each side. And then we have other recurved teeth that help hold on to prey. A lot of snakes have that. Now, when we talk about how wide they can open their jaws, what you'll notice is right here, the left and right jaw are not connected. We have a one-piece jaw. Snakes have jaws that are split here, and there's a ligament that holds it together, so they can expand this way. The other thing they want to do is come down and expand this way, and that's what, see, this jaw would attach directly to the skull, except they have an extra bone. Snakes have an extra bone called a quadrate bone that acts as more of a lever to open up downward. So they open up downward and wide, and then they can just walk it in. And their skull's not like ours anyway. It's just a bunch of bones loosely attached, and not a solid thing like we have. But it's kind of interesting to see it that way. Okay, now when I say our friend the snake, I don't mean our friend the rat snake. These guys are mean, and I brought one so I can prove it. I get called, I'm on the DFW Wildlife Coalition call list, where somebody calls in with a snake, they're liable to sick them on me, and 9 times out of 10, whatever story they tell, it ends up being a rat snake. When people call about a snake, it's always a rattlesnake, it's a water moccasin, but then it never is. Had a guy call me one time, he had a rattlesnake. I said, you have it? He says, yeah, it's in a bucket right here by my desk. I said, can you see it? And he goes, yeah. I said, does it have a rattle on the end of its tail? And he goes, no. I said, well, it might not be a rattlesnake. It might be one of these guys rattling his tail against the side of that bucket, because that's one of their things when they get excited. All right, so how do we tell a Texas rat snake? These are very common, very large constrictors. It wouldn't be unusual to find one that was 5 or 6 feet long. The record's 8 feet long. They're very spunky. If you pick one up, they will bite you. But here's how you just identify them. They're dark. Not a lot of pattern, not a strong pattern like some snakes have, but just black and brown. But look in between the scales, where he's bent here, and you can see in between the scales, that orange, Texas rat snake, you're done. That's the only snake that has that. Now, some other interesting things now that I just noticed here. First of all, press the wrong button there. Whoa, okay, yeah, that's fast. In the bottom of the mouth, they have a glottis. And that is a breathing tube that they can move around. First of all, when they swallow something, the tongue goes out of the way, gets out of the way. Think about swallowing something several times bigger than your head. At some point, it's going to be a problem. You're going to have trouble breathing. Well, they can take this glottis and extend it. I've seen it with pythons, where they actually extend it clear out the side of the mouth. Because it may take them 45 minutes to swallow and get past where they are. Some of these snakes, I had a friend that did some work over in Cameroon. He took a picture of a snake, and before it swallowed its prey, it weighed 30 pounds. And after it swallowed its prey, it weighed 80 pounds. It couldn't crawl for several days. It was stuck there because what it ate was so big. It's amazing what they can do. But these are some of the little tricks that help it do that. All right, these are not rare. Now, they're also pretty arboreal. These probably spend as much time up in trees as they do on the ground. We like them because they eat rats and mice. We don't like them because they eat birds. They'll get up in a bird nest or box or something, and you can proof it. You can put something there to keep that from happening. Okay, everybody seen any of these? Oh, yes, you have a question?
So you say they bite, but they're not
Right. No, they just embarrass you. They're just mean. Yeah, they have a lot of small teeth that help them hold their prey, and it's a defensive thing too. So when you get them, they're liable to bite. You'll see when I get this one out. Yeah. Yes.
My husband took a picture of a rat snake climbing a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they could do that.
They can climb something unbelievably flat. If you look at a cross-section of their body, it's like a loaf of bread. It's like flat on the bottom and here. And then they have scales on the bottom that overlap in a backwards fashion that kind of catch on any irregularity when they're going up something. So they can climb just up the side of a tree, a rock wall, even a brick wall. They're that good at climbers. And that's kind of creepy when you come home and see one on the side of your front porch there. Well, okay, so this is kind of what they look like. Like I say, not a strong pattern, some blotchy kind of squares, but a lot of orange on this one that really gives it away. They're large snakes, and their behavior helps a little too. Okay, time to move on to a nice snake, speckled king. So in the Metroplex, you go Dallas County and east, you got speckled kings, you got desert kings more to the west. King snakes are king snakes because they eat lizards, mice, birds, bird eggs, frogs. They'll eat kind of anything, but they're king of the snakes because they eat, what else? Other snakes, that's right. Now, is this a venomous snake? No. It's a constrictor. So it's going to constrict and kill its prey that way. By the way, how does that kill its prey? How many think suffocate? How many are not going to raise your hand no matter what I ask? Okay, good. Much bigger response on that one. Everybody always thinks they suffocate their prey, but they actually stop the heart from beating. Yeah, it's really interesting. There was just less than a decade ago, this was tested with a boa constrictor, high-speed camera, and a rat. And here comes a rat. The snake strikes out and has a couple of coils around the rat in what length of time? How long do you think it took the snake to strike out and have 2 coils around that thing? Half a second. So he's immediately squeezing, and that's squeezing the blood vessels down kind of flat. The heart is trying to pump against that now increased pressure, and in just a few more seconds, that thing is dead. It can't pump against that. Much faster than a venomous snake would kill you. It's really pretty interesting. So this guy eats other snakes. Would he eat a rattlesnake? Let's say, okay, little scenario. This guy's out going across some vacant area, and here comes a rattlesnake, and they just bump into each other. Well, there's kind of a kerfuffle, right? They tussle, and this guy thinks he's found a meal. The rattlesnake does not eat king snakes, and he thinks this is a terrible deal. He wants to get away. So he's thrashing around trying to get away. The king snake grabs him, starts trying to wrap around him. Rattlesnake turns and bites the king snake and injects venom into him. Enough that you better get to the hospital if it happened to you. What happens? They both die. No. Who else? Somebody wins. King snake. That's why they're king of the snakes. That's right. Why doesn't he die? He's much smaller than we are, and that bite could kill us. He's immune, yeah. He's developed an immunity to the rattlesnake bite. He not only will he not die, he won't get sick. He will eat that rattlesnake and go find a comfortable place to get and burp and go to sleep. You know, that's just it. They are tough. Yeah, they're real sweethearts. They make good pets. We have them in our collection, and they're gorgeous. But that's pretty amazing that it can kill and eat a rattlesnake. Yes. There's a lot of research going into, particularly with venomous snakes and constituents of venom, because you think venom is venom, but it may have 100 different things in it that are very specific in what they attack in the body. And they're looking at those for blood pressure and dementia. And there's just a whole list of things that they're using to do that. But as far as using a king snake and why he's immune, I don't know of any studies on that. But we're looking at, there are other animals like hedgehogs and possums that I think they are looking at. Why are they immune? Good question, yeah. Okay. So if you see one of these, just count yourself lucky because they're really pretty. And I think somebody saw one of these earlier. This is an eastern yellow-bellied racer. Now you remember we said most snakes, their most important sense is their sense of smell, right? Not true with this guy. If you look, you see he's got a little carved out thing in front of his eye here, kind of like we do. That allows you to have true binocular vision. Most snakes have their eyes stuck on the side of their head. Their eyesight's not very good. If you get very close, they can kind of tell what you are. This guy's got great eyesight and true binocular vision, and he's not an ambush hunter. He's an active hunter. He's out there, and he's fast. This is a fast snake. Only thing faster that we have is a coach whip. This guy's really quick, and if he sees something, he gets after it and chases it down. So that's kind of interesting. All right. Oh, one of my favorite topics, water snakes, or as most people call them, water moccasins, and they're not. I don't think I've ever had anybody see a water snake and didn't call it a water moccasin. I even had a scoutmaster one time. I corrected him once. I said, no, that's not it. And he brought me a dead snake in a bag, and he says, I know that's a water moccasin. I went, nope. See, there's a problem, and it's that as they get older, see, this one has a nice pattern. You can kind of see, this is called a diamondback, and it's got this chain-like pattern going down its back that's really easy to recognize. And it has these aren't very distinct, but these bars on their, what we call labial bars on their lips. Those are water snake characteristics. But as this guy gets older, that pattern will go away. He'll just be a big, dark snake. Now, if you see a 5-foot water moccasin, you didn't see a 5-foot water moccasin because they don't get that big. If you see one this big, he's going to be about this big around. That's a pretty big one. They're stocky and pretty short, 2-3 feet. The record may be closer to 4, but you don't see them bigger than that. So here's one that showed, this is a different kind, yellow belly. These first two are the two most common of the 3 that we have in this area. So this is a yellow belly water snake, or sometimes called a blotched water snake. And you can see particularly the vertical bars here. They're very prominent. That's a water snake thing. Watch for that. The other thing is that their tail's long and skinny. You get to a water moccasin, it's fat and stubby. And this is the pretty one that I don't see very often. That's a broad-banded. And once again, you've still got the labial bars there that give it away. Round pupil, like non-venomous snakes tend to have, not water moccasins. That's a pretty snake. Okay, now the venomous snakes. This may take a little while. We've got a couple different kinds of copperheads, 4 different kinds of rattlesnakes, the water moccasin, which is also known as the cottonmouth, same snake, not a different snake, I don't care what they tell you in Arkansas, and the Texas coral snake. We're so lucky. It's one of the few places that has all of those major kinds of snakes. I thought this a long time ago that things bite for different reasons. If you have a venomous snake and he thinks, hey, I'm biting food, what happens? He injects venom. What does the venom do? Well, it subdues the prey, but what else? Does anybody else know what else it does? It serves another pretty important function. Digestion, that's right. We don't eat our food whole, so we can digest it. But imagine if you ate a big chunk of food, it would sit down there in your stomach and probably go bad before they got it digested down. They take care of that. When they have these fangs and inject venom into the interior of the body, those are a lot of digestive enzymes and things are in that venom. And it starts to digest that thing before he even swallows it. Okay. But if a venomous snake thinks he's biting food, he's going to inject venom. If a constrictor does, he's going to bite, hold on, and squeeze. And when he does, he turns off the thinking part of his brain. That's why you don't want to make a mistake with these guys. I had maybe a python about this large one time in a cage, and I tossed a rat in, and it kind of landed in his water bowl a little bit. And I thought, well, he's clear at the end of the other end of the cage. I can do something stupid and reach in and try to get that rat out before he does anything. No. He got me right here and wrapped around here and had me locked up because he knew he had a rat. Boy, I was all by myself. So what I did is I just relaxed. And within 60 seconds, he released. If you struggle, they squeeze until the struggling stops. And every now and then, about once a year, you read an article in a paper where somebody who has a big constrictor should know better. They find him dead and the snake's crawling around the room, where it just constricted him and realized it wasn't something to eat, but killed him nonetheless. So if a venomous snake bites you and he's just being defensive, he might not waste any venom on you. He's just saying, go away, leave me alone. He might put in a little. Now, he could put in a lot if he's had a bad day or whatever. They don't talk about it. But this is where dry bites come from. It's just a defensive thing. You can go to the hospital and know that a rattlesnake bit you, and the doctor will watch you for a while, and they make measurements and run blood tests and do all kinds of things, and they watch it to see if it progresses, and if it doesn't, they say, okay, you can go home. But that's what happens there, and then a constrictor is going to try to get away or bite. What they don't do for defense is constrict. So I'll sometimes take a big 8-10-foot python or something and put it around my shoulders because I'm tired of holding it. They're kind of heavy. And he's not going to whoop around me and squeeze me because he doesn't like what's going on. He tries to get away, and I keep pulling him back. So that's just a little more about snake behavior. All right, the broad-banded copperhead. If you saw a copperhead, that would probably be the one you would see. And they can be very well camouflaged. I was on a walk with I was training some volunteers at the nature center, and somebody goes, copperhead, and they smelled it. They have musk glands. They give off an odor. So water moccasins and copperheads, a lot of times people will smell them before they see them. Some people says it smells like cucumbers, but no, it's just kind of a musky smell. And we stopped, and there was a little light spot here in the deal, and somebody goes, oh, there he is. And the rest of the people are gathered around. Their eyeballs are 4 feet from this snake that's on top of the leaves. And they go, I can't see it. And they had to look for several seconds, and they go, oh, there it is. I see it now. They're just amazingly well camouflaged. Now, the thing to notice about this guy, from an ID standpoint, is people say, oh, it has a triangular head. Well, that's not really a great characteristic to use. The water snakes, like the diamondback water snake we looked at, sometimes when they get defensive, they'll press their head down and their jaws flare out, and they look like they got a triangular head. The thing to look for, really, is how much wider the head is than the neck. You see how much wider it is? That's really pronounced. That's because that's where the venom glands are. Okay, so that skinny neck is one thing to look at. Does anything else look like a copperhead? No. You see a copperhead, if you do, you go, that's a copperhead. It's very easy to identify. Here's another one that's a little browner, so they can vary, a little orangish, a little brownish. Same thing. Here's a southern one that has bands that are a little more constricted on top. So if you go east, and especially southeast of here, you'll run into these more. Same thing, only different. When they're young in particular, you notice their tail's a little bit of a different color. When they're first born, they're about 9 inches long, and their tails are yellow or bright green. Anybody know what they do with those? What would you do with those? You'd sit there real still, and you'd stick it up and wiggle it so it looks like a worm. And here's a very curious lizard over here. He goes, oh, wow, I'm hungry. This is going to be great. It's called caudal luring. They use their tail as a lure, especially when they're little. Another thing you can see here, okay, you see, it was dark right before the flash went off, so his eye isn't quite as cat-like as it might be. You see the nostril there and the pit there. What is the pit for? We have pit vipers. Rattlesnakes, water moccasins, copperheads are all pit vipers. They have holes in their head right here and here. What do those detect? Anybody know? Heat. Those are infrared heat detectors. So if a pit viper is going along and he's following a scent trail of a mouse and there's a hole in the ground, he goes, oh, I think he went down there. He goes down in this hole. Then all of a sudden it's dark and it kind of opens up into a little subterranean room, and the mouse is over in the corner going, ee. The snake can't see it. He can smell it. And with those heat detectors, he can go, he knows how far away it is, how big it is, and he can strike out and get it in total darkness, which is a good trick. Here's another broadband with very broad bands. Okay, these are fun. We don't have many of these around here. They don't like rivers, streams, lakes. They like quiet bodies of water, sloughs, bays, swamps, river banks maybe, but you won't see them out in the river much. And so they're just sitting there. And what they do when you come upon them, if you come upon a regular water snake, he's liable to just go, oh, psh, take off. This guy does not usually take off. What does he do? That. No matter what he's doing, he sees you, he'll go, and just snap open that mouth. And it's white on the inside, and hence the name cottonmouth. That's their defensive display, and it means you'd be wise to leave me alone. Here's another one, different, just a big black snake. Here's another one, he's not even coiled up, and he snapped that mouth open. So they're pretty easy. You know, if you see one of these, again, you're going to say, I know what that is. Now, when they're little, what do they look like? Copperheads. Yeah. Turns out they're in the same genus, so they're really closely related, copperheads and water moccasins. And the only way to really tell them apart is to count the scale rows. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One has like 23 scale rows, one has 25, but it sounds like I'm not that curious. It's whatever. But really, they're very similar, and then they differentiate as they get a little older. So here's a comparison of your just whatever water snake with the labial bars and the round pupil and the rounded head. This guy has a very flat head. He's about to shed, so you can't see what's going on here very well, but there's a cat-like pupil. He's got a nostril. He's got a pit right there in front of his eyeball, so he's a pit viper. And that's not me holding him. I don't know who that is. Okay. This was out at Cedar Ridge Preserve. If you've ever heard Cedar Ridge Preserve, they were going to hide Easter eggs in an area, and this guy was right next to that area, and he wouldn't leave, and they wanted him like gone, you know. So I went out and got him. Now, you can't tell from a picture how big he is, but he was about 2.5 inches in diameter, about 5 feet long, and that's a pretty big rattlesnake these days. So when I picked him up with my snake hook, I have a sturdier snake hook now. I had to use 2 hands because I couldn't pick him up with one hand. He was that heavy. Anyway, they're kind of grumpy good looks, you know. And again, just so we know, there's the nostril and there's the pit. You can kind of see how big he is there. I had to just leave the car and walk home. No, I retrieved it with my snake hook, but that's just for scale. Anyway, okay, this guy is fun. Now, again, pictures are deceiving. This guy's probably about this long. They get about this long full grown. These you don't see these very often, but if you were down in Trinity River bottoms or someplace, you might encounter one of these. East Texas, your chances are even greater. But if you heard one rattling, which a rattlesnake's rattle is one of the things we like about them, as they tell us, oh, hey, there's a rattlesnake, right? If you heard this guy rattle, you wouldn't think rattlesnake. You'd think, insect. They have a very small little rattle, very high pitch. It'd go bzzz. That's what theirs sounds like. So just file that away in case you're ever in a place where one of these might be. That's what it could be. Because even though they're small, drop for drop, I think their venom is worse than the western diamondback. Now, they can't deliver as much, but you would still definitely want to go to the hospital if one of those got you. This was in my yard. I lived in Duncanville, and this was coming out of the flower bed, going across the driveway. I was like, whoa, pretty snakes, Texas coral snakes. So here's what you look at, because they're mimics, milk snakes that look like coral snakes, same colors and bands and everything. And people think, oh, I'll memorize that poem someday, you know, on the red and yellow. But that's not really a good, you'll see why that doesn't always work here in a minute. Things to look for are, one, nose has got a black sock nose, and the first other band is yellow. No matter what happens with the rest of the snake, those stay pretty true. But every other band tends to be yellow. That's a normal pattern and coloration. In Texas, we have black flecks in the red. In the eastern coral snake, it's not. It's just more pure color. But I think these are very pretty. They're very skitsy. They say you could probably pick one up and be fine, but I don't like people who say probably. So here's one. That's different. That's a Texas coral snake. And thank heavens we have this characteristic to look at, because we know it's a coral snake. What happened after that? I don't know. It's just a mutation. But this was naturally occurring. This wasn't a breeder that did this. This was somebody found this in nature, like they found this one. Now, that's a mutation, but what it is if you remember back to this guy, remember, we've got yellow, black, yellow, red with black flecks in it. If you took out all the black, what would it look like? Yeah, if you replaced all the white there with black, you'd have a normal coral snake. So the mutation on this one is, we take out the melanin. We just don't have a dark pigment. We got red and yellow, but we don't have the black pigment. And we call that amelanistic. And that means you don't have a black sock nose, but you got the yellow there. And that would have been black had we had our melanin, okay? Here's a very, very dark one that's missing its red pigment. As you can look right here, you remember we had red bands with black in it? That's what these are, but the red's gone. The black and yellow are true. And we still have black nose with a yellow band behind it. And we just call it melanin. There's actually another word for it, meaning it doesn't have its red pigment, but it's hard to pronounce, so I didn't want to put it in there. And this is one that's one of the mimics that people go, oh, I think that's a coral snake. Well, no, because we got a yellow nose. It's supposed to be black, and this is supposed to be yellow. So would it be okay to pick that up? Yes, unless you were in Latin America, where they have about 3 dozen different kinds of coral snakes, and some of them have this pattern. Some of them have 2 colors. Don't pick up any snakes in Latin America. All right, snake bite first aid. Now, I want to point out the source here, the Mayo Clinic. I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going to give you some information from them, and then I will tell you what I would do differently. Do the following. Call 911. Now, that's a one-size-fits-all deal. They're throwing something out there for millions of people, and for a lot of people, that's probably the thing to do. Not for everybody. If you know snakes, my phone, when I go someplace, I find the nearest emergency room that has antivenom. I program it in, and there's a website that tells you which hospitals have antivenom and which don't. In Fort Worth, Cook's Children is the one that has antivenom. Who knew? Anyway, but I already have their address and phone number so that if something happens, I jump in the car, head that way, call them while I'm on the way, say, I got bitten by such and such, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I can get there quicker than the ambulance can get to me, and they won't have antivenom or be able to do much for you. Now, that's just me, okay? I'm not saying don't call 911, but you're going to be sitting there waiting until they get there and then waiting more till they get you to the hospital. Maintain calm and move away from snake. Move away from the snake, that's easy. Remaining calm is virtually impossible. If you get bitten by a viper, I've known a number of people that have been bitten by vipers, and they say it's very painful. They describe it as like an ice pick that's heated up till it's red, and it sticks in you and it doesn't cool down. Now, some bites are less than that, but it can be an excruciatingly painful bite. So if you're out with somebody and they get bitten and your job is to keep them calm, you got your work cut out for you. Yes?
Would an ice pack help calm the bite site? Superficially calm.
Maybe, but you still shouldn't do it. Yeah, because there's certain don'ts that we'll do in a minute here, and one is like no alcohol, but I'm thinking if I got to deal with this person, I could use a good stiff drink. So there's, you adjust as you have to. You really want to do something first aid-wise, but the best first aid is really none of that. And we'll see as it gets closer. But just remember, whoever gets bitten is going to be in some pain. Remove jewelry, tight clothing, and the other thing that's not on their list is you want to immobilize the limb. So I carry with me things like, it's all wrinkled up, but this is just a triangular bandage that you can, immobilize if somebody gets bitten on the arm. If they get bitten on the leg, you help them walk. You don't want to use the muscles in that leg. Anybody know why that is? Why are we not wanting to move the muscles in the affected limb? What? Yeah, that's right, but where's it spreading in? The vipers have very large proteinaceous molecules in their venom, and they move in the lymphatic system. Coral snake is smaller polypeptide kind of things, and they go right into the bloodstream. So that's why in Australia, they will take an ACE bandage and wrap an ACE bandage to slow that down. We don't do that here with a viper bite because we don't want it to stay local, but we don't want it to move too much either. So the lymphatic system is moved by muscular activity. And so if you don't do that, then it'll move slowly, which is fine, what you want before it gets dumped into your regular circulatory system. So that's why you immobilize the limb. Just, help people walk or, do anything you can to immobilize that limb. Okay? That's not on their list, by the way. Position the bite at or below the level of the heart. You read different reputable websites, and they'll say at or below, at or above, at. It's all over the place. Just, if I mobilized this limb and got bitten here, I'd put it about right there where the heart is. Clean the wound, but don't flush it with water. Don't. Just maybe pour a little water over it, and you put something clean on it. That's good, because there's going to be maybe venom around there that you don't want sneaking in. So that's some good general stuff, but like I say, I modify things to fit my situation, and you can go online and look at other sites if you want, but that's pretty good information. Any questions about that? It's a fairly important topic. You don't want to wait until you get bitten and then go, I need to look into this. Because they have a saying in venomous snake bite territory, time is tissue. Remember, this is digesting you as you speak. Now, that doesn't mean you have hours to get to the hospital. Yes, in the back. I bet if you rolled into their emergency room with a snake bite, yeah, they would. I think they kind of would have to, if they're the ones with the antivenom especially. Yes. Do you have, you're just, okay. All right. Don't do the following. Here we go. Don't use a tourniquet. Don't apply ice. Don't cut the wound. Attempt to, you all saw True Grit. Okay, don't do that. Don't try to capture the snake. We all have phones. Take a picture of the snake. Don't drink caffeine or alcohol, which could speed the absorption of the body's venom. Okay. I have some, this is out of my magic snake bite box here. I have a cold compress. No, don't do that. Some people would think it might feel good to put a hot pack on there. No, don't do that. This is my favorite. Neutralize the venom with electricity. Oh, there are people who swear. There's a game warden in Oklahoma that sells stun guns for just that purpose. No scientific evidence to support that. Now, when I was on the North Central Texas Poison Control Board of Consultants, we used to, it was just for fun. If a snake thing came up, I was there, but most of the time it was just doctors talking. So we'd have these M&Ms, morbidity and mortality reviews, where the doctors would talk about what went right and what went wrong on some cases. And there was this one that I'd heard of, but I always thought it was an urban legend, where these guys out in Arizona lived out in the middle of nowhere, had pet rattlesnakes like, you would. And if there's anything I've learned about venomous snakes like rattlesnakes, they're attracted to two things, tattoos and alcohol. And so here were these guys that had these snakes that just, they loved their snakes. And this one guy, after he'd been drinking a little bit, was going to kiss his snake on the head goodnight. Seems like a great idea. Anyway, it bit him on the bottom lip, got him really good. He put the snake up, wasn't too worried, called his friend over because they had this emergency protocol using a car battery and jumper cables, and kind of blew off a certain part of his face there. But at least I guess he didn't die of envenomment. They talked about that. That was a real case, and I always thought it was an urban legend. You can still buy these things at outdoorsy stores. These are snake bite kits. If you've never seen one of those, I'd be surprised. They've been around since I was a scout. You open them up. I love these things. They've got some antiseptic. They've got a very sharp blade. They have a piece of string, not even this big, that they want you to use for a tourniquet, which is a terrible idea. But my favorite thing is, you see how this is oblong in cross-section? Okay. It says the word on here, it says low and high. So if you squeeze it this way, you get low suction. But if you squeeze it this way, you get high suction. When do you ever want to use that low suction setting? I think I'd always go with the high. Maybe that's why they went to making them round. Now you can get them in the round variety. I also have, if you want to look at later up here, I have about a 75-year-old snake bite kit. This is an extractor where they try to suck the venom out, and it's made of ground glass. It's just a highly precision instrument. It's really cool. Some ammonia inhalant so that they don't miss all the excitement, be awake for it all. And at least they have a constrictor band that you still don't want to use, that it's wider. But this is older than I am. Kind of fun, though. All right, let's see what else. I think we're getting close here. How are we on time? Okay. I think we're close to the end. Yeah. Okay, so what can you do? Leave snakes alone. They really prefer that. Watch where you put your hands and feet. That's usually how people get bit. Some say that most bites come from people messing with snakes, but I don't think there's really evidence to support that. This is certainly too many get bitten that way, but this is, you're in the wood pile, you're moving something, you're reaching where you can't see, you get bitten. That can happen. Hopefully we've done some of that today. And if you have any trouble with any critters, this is raccoon in your attic or snake or moles or anything, these people are great. They are a clearinghouse for all sorts of critter problems. And like I say, I just get the snake ones, but they deal with all kinds of situations. So you might write that number down, or just remember DFW Wildlife Coalition and educate others, okay? Snakes are our friends. Any questions? Yes?
I heard that it takes Benadryl if somebody or an animal or your dog.
I've heard it with regard to dogs. I wouldn't... see, the problem with doing something before you get to the doctor, he's going to try to analyze the effects of the snake bite. And if you've done anything, it's going to complicate his job. Because he's going to make measurements. He's going to be writing on you with a Sharpie a lot. And they're going to be charting how much this is growing, swelling. He's going to be looking at your blood chemistry, other things. And he's going to be observing you for a long time before he decides whether or not to give you antivenom. And so if you put ice on it, that can actually have a negative effect on skin cells. He's going to go, well, I don't know. Or if you cut it and try to suck the venom, he's going to go, well, I don't know how much damage is done by what you did and what the snake did. Mary Lee, do you want to help me real fast? I got a volunteer here. Yeah, do you need to? What we can do is I've got some snakes here that I will just scoot over and wrap this up. And if you are interested, because some are and some aren't, if you want to see those, I will move over to this table and we'll go ahead and close this portion of the meeting. Is that okay? Okay, thank you.